Hello everyone and welcome along to the latest episode of the TurfCast Podcast pre-game show, of course with me, Joe Redmond, and joining us this week is Chris from the Villa Together podcast. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well, thanks. About yourself?
Yeah, all good, thank you. To those that watch regularly, you'll know that basically me and Simon on the regular TurfCast Podcast show, we don't know too much. We know some stuff about upcoming opponents, but obviously Chris is a Villa fan. He watches Villa every single week. He's going to know more than me. So what better person to have on to chat about Villa? But Chris, let's get into it then. Let's talk about your season so far then, because of course at this point last season, looking over your shoulder, in a bit of trouble. Obviously, in the end, you obviously stayed up. That's why I'm talking to you now. But obviously this season it's different. This season you're looking up, none of this looking underneath. I think it was you boys that tweeted something about at the end of last season you had a certain amount of points and you've already reached like 2/3 of that already, or 3/4 of that already. So good time, Villa. Good season so far.
Yeah, I mean it's been fantastic when you look at it in compared to last season, staying up, by 1 point that we got on the last day. It's just amazing. But yeah, I tweeted, I think, so game week 35 last season, we beat Arsenal to go to 30. No, actually, I think it was a draw. No, it was a draw against Everton, took us to 30 points. So with 3 games left to stay up, we're on 30 points. We're now on 29. And we're not even in halfway through the season. So that is a measure of how far we've come. I think last season we were pretty poor. You watched the games. We were poor, a big chunk of the season. Ironically, it was against Burnley away that we kind of seemed to look like we were going to be getting better. We had a couple of bad injuries. Wesley picked up an injury. Tom Heaton picked up an injury as well. I think that
obviously Burnley fans were wrenching when Tom went down. Obviously, when we were allowed to go on, I sit in the stand which is behind the goal where Tom got injured, and obviously Burnley fans still love Tom just as much as what we did when he was here. He's a Burnley legend. He won the league championship as Burnley captain, so we were heartbroken to see him go down. But yeah, it were a good game, that one. Not from a Burnley perspective, but definitely from your perspective.
Yeah. It was a good win, and it kind of we changed the formation, started, and we thought, here we go. But yeah, so far this season, I think recruitment's been key. We've been fantastic in all fairness, and I think you probably say 90-95% of the games that we've played in, we've been at least competitive. But most of the games, we've been probably the better team in a lot of them. You're looking at Ollie Watkins, Matty Cash, Emi Martinez. They've all been brilliant. Ross Barkley. It's been good. He's just come back from injury. He missed 7 games and then he came back for the Man City game. So yeah. It's been great so far. And we, like you say, we're looking up rather than down at the moment.
Are your signings there? Obviously, Cash and Watkins and Barkley and things like that. How have they done then this season? Is that the reason why you're doing so well this season? I think, going back to last season, you signed a lot of decent players, but I think it took a long time for it to gel. As you were saying, you feel like it was the Burnley game, which was on New Year's Day, wasn't it? Yeah. Where you feel like it finally started to turn a corner. But this time, they've come in and they've done the job straight away, haven't they? So is it better recruitment this year, or have they just gel quicker?
I think the key thing is that last season we, so obviously going 2 years ago, getting promoted from the Championship to the Premier League, there was a number of players who came to the end of their contract. So I think we released 13 players, which included a few players who were on loan as well, Tammy Abraham being one, and he didn't come back. So a big chunk of our squad went. And there were a lot of players, like Glenn Whelan, Midi Jedinak, coming towards the end of their contract. So they were released. So we signed 11 players on our return to the Premier League. And most of them have been fairly decent for us. I mean, Marvelous Nakamba has been a bit part player, but he came in the other night against Newcastle and had a good game. I just think at that time, to have 11 players come in, it's almost like there's too many things going on. We're stepping up a level. We haven't got we haven't really got a core of a squad that came up from the Championship, because most of them have gone. Then you've got these players that need to adapt to England, adapt to Villa, and then adapt to the Premier League all at once. So there's a lot of things that happen. Whereas this summer recruitment, we have got it bang on. What they've done is they've said, okay, well, we need, Tom Heaton's a top goalkeeper. Martinez is probably better, but I think at the same time, it's a case of maybe let's go for Martinez. There's concern over Heaton with his injury because obviously he's only just started coming back. So it's like, okay, we've got Martinez. We've gone for Cash at right back. I think right back was an area where we weren't quite comfortable there last season. Bit of strength in depth in midfield. So bringing in Ross Barkley. Ollie Watkins as a striker. He just almost epitomises exactly what we want to do and what Dean Smith wants us to do. He's full of running. He works hard from the front. And then Bertrand Traore, he's just given us that bit of extra class from the wing. So he's almost highlighted the areas where you'd say, yes, we definitely need improvement there. And we've brought that in. And like all of those players at the moment, they're all starters. So it is 50%, pretty much 50% of a team being brand new, but they've all settled in brilliantly. I think a couple of them, Cash, Martinez, Watkins, Barkley as well. So most of them, are already adapted to England, and a couple of them adapted to the Premier League. So it's just a case of, I think we Cash and Watkins stepping up, and then Bertrand Traore, which is settled now. I think at the start he took a bit of while to get up to the pace of the Premier League, but recruitment has been absolutely bang on. I think that's been the key thing behind us getting up the league rather than kind of struggling.
Yeah. Do you think it's fair to say that I remember last season a lot of the talk about Villa was Jack Grealish and how good Jack Grealish was, and just going back to the game on New Year's Day, I think the reason why you won that game is because it was the Jack Grealish show. He absolutely bossed our midfield, and obviously the transitions between your midfield and your strikers was pacey and things like that, mainly because of Jack. But I think like this season, I don't feel like it's just about Jack Grealish anymore. I feel like if you keep Jack Grealish quiet last season, if you kept Jack Grealish quiet, you kept Villa quiet, and you probably went on to win the game, which is why we obviously lost quite comfortably at the Turf on New Year's Day. Whereas this season, I don't think that is the case. I think if you keep Jack Grealish quiet, you've then got to also keep Watkins quiet. You've got to keep Traore quiet. Do you think that's sort of like a fair assessment of Villa this season? Yeah,
bang on. It was. I think that was the key thing when we beat Liverpool and we smashed them 7-2. Obviously, before the game, it was like how much can Grealish do? Yeah. And whenever they tried to stop Grealish, he was able just to knock it off to Ross Barkley, get it forward to Watkins. And they've all been fantastic. And a couple of other players that have stepped up to play as well, like John McGinn and Douglas Luiz. So it's almost like Grealish has got those weapons around him now. And if he performs below par, which, I don't think he's done this season. Below par for Jack is like a 7 out of 10. He's got those players around him, like you say. So that's bang on. I think last season, if Jack was quiet, we were quiet. Whereas this season, if Jack's quiet, then the other guys have kind of come to the table.
So what are your ambitions then for this season? Because obviously, like I said, you're looking up rather than down. I think last season your ambition would have been to finish 17th, and rightly so. To be fair, you've got to stay in the Premier League for season. I don't no matter how big of a club you are, even Villa's your lead. First thing you got to do in the first year in the Premier League is stay up. Then you kick on. Obviously, that's what Leeds were trying to do this season. But obviously, this season, like I said, you're looking up. Where do you think you can finish? Are you talking about Europa League? Are you just trying to talk about top 10? Are you not trying to get carried away? What is it for Villa this season?
I think for me personally, obviously it'd be great to get Europa League. I just think for me, 10th, 11th, 12th, somewhere around that would be really good. And obviously you look at last season finishing 17th, then we're up a couple of steps from that. But at the same time, you just can't look beyond our current league position and the fact we've got 2 games. I think if we win our 2 games in hand, we go 4th, we go above Liverpool. So you look at it in isolation, how it is now, and you look at our league position, how well we're playing, how everything's going, you think, you know what, realistically, we could challenge for top 6. But I think you need a lot of things to kind of fall into place. You've got to make sure that we don't get any injuries. We've got
of course,
player possibly coming in from Marseille. It's going to strengthen us. And as well, you've got to make sure that the players keep performing at the level that they're at. We took a bit of a dip, I think, obviously because of this COVID situation. We beat Newcastle fairly easily, but you could tell that we weren't quite as fluid as we had been. But we could very easily finish top 6. But we also could very easily finish, just around 10th or just below. So, but for me, I'd love to finish top 6. But I think around 10th is probably, will still kind of reflect a very good season for us, considering how bad we were last year.
Yeah, definitely. I think going back to our Europa League that season, the season that we qualified for the qualifiers. Obviously, we finished 7th, but again, everything kind of did fall into place. We never had any injuries. Obviously, I think City won the FA Cup that season, so that meant it went down to 7th. Leicester were poor that season, Everton were poor that season, and never really anyone challenging us, and it just all kind of fell into place like that. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. But of course, you've just mentioned then sort of like your transfer targets and things like that. I think you said off camera, off air, should I say, just before we start recording this, you've had a bid accepted for somebody. How are you looking then in terms of the transfer market? Obviously, because Villa, as we all know, have got some money. They do spend cash and things like that. So are you looking like you're going to be bringing people in? I presume with a bid accepted that you will be doing.
Yeah, so we've had a bid, I think, of around, I think it's £14 million of add-ons for Morgan Sanson from Marseille. So that looks like that one's going to be hopefully tied up over the next couple of days. Probably he'll come in too late for the Burnley game, but it should be available for the Southampton game at the weekend. He's a very good player, good midfielder. Similar to John McGinn in that he's full of running, but he's got an extra bit of class. He's good on the ball. And he's been one of the kind of top assist guys in the League One over the last few seasons. He's just kind of fallen off a bit with Marseille. And in all fairness, Marseille have kind of dropped off a bit. In all fairness, they've kind of had a few issues with injuries and stuff like that. But that's going to strengthen us because rather than you look at it last season, this is a player you'll know. But this time last year, we were bringing in Danny Drinkwater on loan, and he was terrible for both of us. Whereas this season, we're bringing in a guy who's been playing Champions League football this season. He's played Champions League football for the last few seasons. You know, he's regularly scoring goals and getting assists for a top side in Europe. So it kind of shows what the direction that we're going in. It might be, you know, as I touched on about, we're 8th in the league with 2 games in hand. So is it a case that the board have looked at it and I think, do you know what, we could push on here? Conor Hourihan's gone on loan to Swansea. Sanson is possibly a direct replacement for him, but Hourihan hasn't really been playing. So I think it's a case that Hourihan's gone because he wants to play. Sanson's going to come in. He's going to challenge the likes of Louise and McGinn and possibly Barkley. And rather than bring on, like we did last season, have Danny Drinkwater to come on, we've got a guy who's been playing Champions League footballer recently to come on. So we're looking good. I think that's probably the only signing we'll make. I know a lot of people say possibly go for a striker, but I think when you spend 30 odd million on a striker who you expect because he's quite fit to play most weeks, I think kind of it would almost be a bit of a waste to just have a striker that's coming in who you know is going to be second choice.
Yeah, fair enough. I think where Danny Drinkwater is now sort of like shows where he is now in terms of ability as well. Yeah. Is it the Turkish Premier League or something? And then he's putting Instagram posts out about Lampard getting sacked. It didn't work out at either of our clubs, did it? And I think that part of the reason why it didn't work out at Burnley is he clearly has some sort of off-field issues. I don't know what it is, but I've been getting battered by a Scunthorpe player in Manchester on a night out or something like that.
Yeah, it did.
I'm not sure. It just sounds like an absolute mess over the last few years for Danny Drinkwater, but obviously we won't get hung up on that. We've obviously already played once already this season, 0-0 at Villa Park. Not the most entertaining games, but you get that sometimes with Burnley. But obviously we kept you quiet, and that's what me and Sam were just saying on the podcast. A club with as many players, decent attacking players as you have, we were quite encouraged to keep you quiet. Now, we've been quite poor going forward. And we are still kind of like in that at the minute. We're still quite poor going forward. Chris Wood's out of form. Ashley Barnes hasn't really been scoring too many. Obviously, he got the win goal in the win at Liverpool, but obviously it was a penalty. But like I said, I think the main thing for us was we managed to keep you quiet, and that's given us a bit of encouragement. What were your thoughts on that game and the 0-0 at Villa Park earlier in the season?
It was it's an odd one because we clearly we controlled the game and we were dominant without. I don't think we ever really looked like scoring. You know, we had 29 shots at goal. You know, majority of them on target. I think the issue we had, which wasn't a major, it was just a slight thing, was that Douglas Luiz, I think, was suspended. So Marvelous Nakamba was the holding midfielder, and he's a good player. He does a decent job. But the issue that we got with him playing is that you have Mings and Konza that like to bring the ball out from the back. And they also they'll play it into Douglas Luiz, who'll carry the ball. And he's very good on the ball, so he'll spray it around, link up. But because Marvis Nakamba's not that comfortable on the ball, what happened in that game against Burnley was that when Konza, I think it was Konza and Mings, it might have been Hawes and Mings, were bringing the ball out, rather than play it into Nakamba's feet, they were going long. And because we were playing it long, it was just easy for, me and Tarkowski to kind of get rid of the ball. And what happens is when Louise is the man in front of the back four, we play it into him, he always drags a player out with him. You'd have had, say, the likes of Brownhill possibly kind of following Louise. Jack Grealish does it a lot as well. He drops deep, ball into him. He takes one, maybe two players away from him. It just creates that bit of space. And we didn't have that against you guys. I think it makes a bit of a difference because then we probably did play it a bit too long and it kind of went into your hands. But you just don't know. It was just one of them. I think, we probably could have played for another 5 hours and I don't think we'd have scored. It was a game that you look at it and you think, well, how haven't we scored? But realistically, I don't think Pope had a massive amount to do.
No. It was one of the games, I agree with that. I remember a lot of other fans on Twitter saying, oh, well, look at this, we've had 29, nearly 30 shots. Oh, we haven't scored, he's beyond me. But Pope didn't really have a say to make. A lot of them shots were distance shots. And it's the typical Burnley way. It's 2 back to 4. When you have possession, we aren't, especially with players like Grealish, like you say, we don't want to give him any space. I think we learned a lot from that New Year's Day game with Grealish. I think we were not letting him do that, where you're seeing how he drags players out and creates the space, trying his best not to let him do that, staying in the formation, staying in the 2 back to 4. And then you boys were shooting from sort of like in front of our midfield, because you couldn't get in behind us and stuff like that. So I totally agree with that. And I'm fingers crossed we can do something, a similar job this week, but hopefully actually get some attacks built. But yeah, thinking about going ahead to this game then, obviously at the time of recording this will be tomorrow night on Wednesday night. What are your thoughts going into this one then? Because obviously you mentioned then you'll have, is it Louise back? And so fingers crossed for you. You'll be hoping that you'll be able to look a bit more dangerous on the ball.
I hope so. I think the thing with us this season is that we've had our form away from home has been better. Not necessarily, I don't think it necessarily reflects our performances, but I think away from home there's been a couple of games. We beat Arsenal 3-0. We beat Leicester 1-0 away. A couple of good wins. But at the same time, some of those games you come up against a team that is expected to attack a bit more because they're at home. So I think that's helped us slightly. And I think at the same time, we haven't been as gung-ho. So we've obviously been quite good defensively. I think we've only conceded 3 goals away from home this season, which has been quite good. It's a tough one because obviously, you guys had a good performance against Liverpool last week. So obviously, form-wise, you've done quite well. We kind of got back to form with a win against Newcastle, but at the same time, you still don't know how bad the kind of COVID situation has affected us. So I'm kind of on the fence with this one. Part of me thinks, it could be maybe 1-1, 0-0. But at the same time, I think we might, being at full strength, we might maybe edge it 1-0 possibly.
Yeah, I was just saying on the podcast that we've recorded, it's one of these games that if Villa win 3-0 or we win 1-0 or it finishes 0-0 or 1-1, nobody's going to look at that and go, oh, that's a strange result. I think it can easily go either way. I'm similar to you. I'm kind of on the fence, but I've got to back us after the win against Liverpool because we just looked so organised as well. Salah, he only played 30 minutes, but he couldn't hurt us. Firmino couldn't hurt us, and I know you boys have a lot of good attacking players. So fingers crossed, we can keep you quiet again as we already have done. But that's another thing, we've already kept you quiet this season. So I'm hoping we can keep you quiet again. I'm going to go for a typical Burnley 1-0 simply because we've beaten Liverpool, and I know. I'll say the same as what I said on the podcast. I'm in that man frame now of we're beating Liverpool. We can beat anybody. And all right, that's probably a little bit of a weird mindset because they're not as good this season. But obviously you smashed them. So I guess you could say the similar sort of thing. Yeah. I think if it weren't for that Liverpool game, I'd probably be very worried about this one. But we've got the 3 points that we needed to sort of move away from the drop zone. If we can get another 3 points, we can start to look at mid-table and things like that and pushing on again. I think it can go either way, but I'm probably just heart over head going to predict 1-0, I think.
Yeah, I think as you say, those kind of results, maybe 0-0, 1-1 or 1-0 either way, I don't think many people would be surprised at that in all fairness. I think it is going to be a tight game.
Just before we go then, obviously Eaton's at Villa. On the bench though now, he's come back from injury. You've signed Martinez, as you say, and in your opinion, Martinez is obviously a better goalkeeper. So where is Tom at now in terms of his Villa career then? Because obviously he left Burnley because he was second to Nick Pope and he didn't want to be on the bench. I know, Tom, that Simon on the podcast is a very good friend with Tom. He cuts his hair, or cuts his hair when he's allowed to cut his hair. So I know Tom won't enjoy sitting on the bench. He's not said that, by the way. I'm just sort of like saying I know he won't enjoy sitting on the bench. So where's he at now in terms of his Villa career? Because like I say, Martinez is probably going to be number one choice. Heaton's probably going to be a bit miffed off about that. Is there any rumours that he could be going anywhere, maybe in the summer or even in January?
The only thing that I'd heard was, I've seen it on Twitter, was possibly going to Arsenal, but they've just signed Matty Ryan on loan. I think they wanted a bit more experienced goalkeeper to be second choice to Leno. That's about it, to be honest. I think there's probably still, obviously, he's on the bench, as you said. He's played a few kind of, I say, reserve team games. They're, it's like Premier League 2 these days, isn't it? It's like youth team. Played a few of those games. So, fitness wise, I think he's okay. I think there was an issue that his injury may have been, really bad and that potentially he might not recover from it. I don't know if that's that he's maybe the kind of short-term future is a case of, okay, assess his injury. Maybe that's personal, whether it's the club. Assess his injury for the next 6 months and see how he gets on, make sure he's okay, because, it could affect a move elsewhere. But I know what you mean. He is a top goalkeeper. I think he could play for, any club. I think outside the top 6, possibly he could really challenge, first choice at a lot of those clubs. It's just that we've brought in a goalkeeper who's younger than him, who's more all-rounded than him. I think Heaton's a good goalkeeper. I think distribution, not terrible distribution, but it's not up there with the best. Whereas Martinez, sometimes he's goal kicks and him kicking out his hand, he's up there with the likes of Alisson and Ederson. It's great to have a good second choice goalkeeper. At the same time, you kind of know that those kind of players don't really want to be second choice. So I think it's just a case of waiting and see how fit he is before he assesses his future. Whether he looks at going into coaching or something, I don't know. But he's still got enough in the tank to carry on playing first team football in the Premier League. I just can't see that being for us. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. I think he's if he is still as hungry as what he was when he was at Burnley, which it's only been a couple of years, I presume he will be. He will want to move as and when he can, whether it's a Premier League club or a top Championship club, who knows? But he's certainly got a bit more in the tank. Definitely, I agree with that, and it'd be interesting to see what happens with Tom Heaton. But Chris, that's it then for this week's pre-game show. All the best for tomorrow at the time of recording this. But just before we do end the show, do you want to tell everybody sort of where to find the Villa Together podcast?
Yeah, so we're active on Twitter and Instagram. We're at Villa Together. You can watch all our episodes on YouTube if you just search Villa Together, and you can listen to any of our episodes on the usual platforms, so Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, any of that kind of stuff. Search through Anchor, Villa Together, and you will find us. So yeah, that's where everyone can find us.
Happy days. Thanks for coming on the show, Chris, and good luck for tomorrow.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks for having me. Anytime.